talking about Francis Ngannou, of course, he's having his big hubbub with the UFC about this is his last fight. And on the card, his next contract he signs, he wants to have boxing in there. He wants to have a pay increase. And right now, let's see, he released on Twitter, he said, this was on January 14th. He says, been talking to my family and friends in the crypto space. Bitcoin is huge in Africa, and I'm thinking about taking half my fight purse in it. Bitcoin is the future, and I'm a believer. So I thought it was really interesting that Francis Ngannou is the first fighter that I've seen come out and say something like he won't have his contract in Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency of some sort. I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah. And I tell you, what else is interesting is that if he, say Gann beats him, he immediately becomes a free agent and he can start negotiating outside of there. And if his heart's truly in wanting to do some boxing, go do some boxing. You know what I'm saying? But, however, if he beats Gann, that's going to kind of muddy the waters there for him, because then what it's going to become a matter of, it's going to take him back to, the UFC, there's a championship clause in their contract. So my understanding is that would hold them either to 3 fights or a year. Anyways, but, then, okay, say that his contract gets extended because he's got the title. Well, then it becomes a matter of, well, he's got to accept a fight. And if they're not on the same sheet of music here financially, he could basically pull a Randy Couture and just hold the title hostage until the UFC stripped him of it.
Right. But then the problem would turn into is if he starts trying to hold them hostage like that, he's going to sit on the shelf possibly for a long time. Yeah, and as you saw, and as you've seen with some people like Brandon Vera, when they were having their contract dispute, they put him on the shelf, and the next thing you know, he can't. He was having a lot of trouble in UFC. Now I know he's rebounded over and won, but that's a potential. And then even his name recognition, if he sits on the shelf for 2 years, he can't go fight Tyson Fury. No one's going to, in 2 years, people forget about him.
All right. Well, first and foremost, let's talk about the Tyson Fury fight there. Now, if Ngannou was current UFC heavyweight champion, and he wanted to bring that title over and defend that in a boxing match against Tyson Fury, there might be some talk there. But I don't see Tyson Fury as the current boxing heavyweight champion accepting a fight from a fighter who's not even really a ranked boxer in boxing. I just don't see how that works out. And I know money talks and everything like that, but when you get down to the business side of things, it doesn't make sense for Tyson Fury to risk the loss as the current heavyweight champion, because boxing's not going to let Ngannou go in there and fight him for the titles. And then so now he's going in there to fight Ngannou and say it's not a title fight, so it's just an exhibition fight, and he goes in there and gets knocked out. It's a lose-lose for Tyson Fury, And Ngannou, I would also go to argue that I don't think Ngannou's as big of a name that would bring, where they be like, unlike when Conor McGregor and Mayweather fought. First off, Mayweather had no titles, was a retired individual, just coming back to get the big, the number 50 there. And so in other words, they were able to put that one together. Plus, Conor McGregor was a proven pay-per-view draw that Ngannou is not.
Right. Well, I don't think there's any one. I think WBC is not going to allow it. Like I'm in agreement with you, because there's going to be someone who's in line for the next title shot against Fury, and they're not going to want Ngannou to jump over them. I don't think Tyson Fury, I think, would beat Francis Ngannou in just a straight up boxing match.
I agree.
And I like Ngannou, but it's I've also, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Tyson Fury's took some of them shots from Deontay Wilder, and Deontay Wilder would, sat him down with 3, 4, 5 times throughout their fights.
Yes,
And
scary knockout power, but it's not the first time that Tyson Fury's faced that.
Yeah. And when you think about it too, Tyson Fury's been fighting all this time. He understands the little tips and tricks to do in a fight. And example, like he'll lay on, like when he would lay on Deontay Wilder, and to wear out Deontay Wilder. Also, I know when Floyd took on Conor, they were saying how there was a couple times Conor would get into these scraps, and he should have just took a knee, and he could have took an 8 count. And he didn't really do it because his corner never sits there and tells you to take a knee just to get that 8 count to break things up for a second. You know? And so in turn, just little things like that with inside the boxing world that I don't think you're going to see.
Well, and again, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you're good.
Oh no, I was going to say again, if Francis Ngannou truly wants to fight Tyson Fury, then what he should do is he needs to go full time as a boxer and get in there and start fighting and work his way up for a title shot. Right. I'll see. Here's the thing, and then this is all I'm gonna say about this. It would be one thing if Tyson Fury, if you were going to mix martial arts and boxing and have the two, have the champions actually compete against each other. To be fair, if the MMA fighter goes and fights boxing style, the boxer should be willing to come do MMA, and they're not. Yeah. The only boxer that came to do MMA on the UFC level was a lights out Tony. James Toney did. And granted he wasn't boxing or anything like that, but I mean, but the point being is it's going to be a one-way street in that aspect. The boxers are absolutely going to let the MMA guys come to them and fight them, sure. But in turn, how is it advantageous to the UFC to put that fight together for, to say, hey, all right, we're going to take all the risk from you, sending Francis Ngannou over here to fight Tyson Fury, and then have him get beat pillar to post. And now the UFC champion just got his butt handed to him by the, boxing heavyweight champion. But it was a boxing match. Now, if the boxing champion comes over to MMA and he beats old Francis Ngannou pillar to post again, because, I mean, let's be honest, the likelihood is, especially in Francis Ngannou's case, it's going to be a stand-up fight regardless of whether it's in the octagon or the ring. Ngannou's not trying to take anybody down. But the point being is, that would be the only way it would be fair. And you're just not going to get a boxer that's going to agree to that. At least not an active current champion. And I don't see why an active current MMA champion would want to risk that either. Because in fairness, you've got to prepare. If you're going to go fight a boxer, and especially a guy that's all they're doing, then you're going to have to step away from the world of MMA, and you're going to have to focus your time and energy on boxing, and need to understand that, while you might do some boxing, you're not putting in the work and have the experience and the hours and the, the rounds that the guy that lives and breathes it has done, and vice versa. If the boxer comes over to the MMA side of things, when James Toney fought Randy Couture was a wrestler, and, he knew the groundwork. And so all he had to do was keep from getting knocked out. Once he got James Toney to the ground, no matter how much work James Toney did preparing for, trying to stop being taken down and trying to get up off his back and all that stuff, he was battling years of experience that was on top of him now. You see what I'm saying? And that's the same thing an MMA fighter would face going over there.